Welcome to the 902 Podcast, the official podcast of the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office in Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm Captain Vik, and I want to thank you for listening. This podcast will give you an inside look at LSO with topics and guests to discuss public safety issues impacting Lancaster County. Be sure to follow the 902 Podcast for highlights on news, cases, and the people working for you at LSO. You can also follow us across social media at LSO Nebraska on Facebook, X, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Welcome to the 902 Podcast. We are in studio today. Sheriff Wagner, Chief Deputy Houchin, as usual. Thanks for being here, guys.
You bet. Great to be here.
And we're really lucky to be joined with the Nebraska Attorney General, Mike Hilgers, today. Mike, thanks for being here.
It's great to be here. Do we do titles? I got to call you Captain.
You can just call me John on this. That's fine.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
But Sheriff Wagner's like, you got to call me Sheriff.
You can call me Bob.
Yeah.
All right, Bob.
Sometimes be careful because he'll go way off script. So yeah,
all right.
No, but we appreciate you being here. And we've been meaning to bring you in for a while. I know you've got a lot of stuff going on at the AG's office, a lot of projects, a lot of issues that you guys are working on. But before we dive into that, we usually try to give our listeners a little bit of insight into our guests and what makes them them. So tell us a little bit about you. Where did you get started? High school, college. Where are you from?
Yeah. Well, first, thanks for having me on. This is awesome. We're not on video, but if people saw like the powerhouse, they got the whole leadership team of the Lancaster County Sheriff. I don't know who's running the place right now.
Yeah, it's on autopilot right at the
It's on autopilot.
Ben hit the button before we came in, so yeah.
We tied the rope to the wheel and just, tied it off. So
It's great. I'm looking forward to the conversation. From Nebraska originally, from Omaha, middle of 5 kids, and went to high school there. Went to Baylor for undergrad, which is down near Dallas, Waco. So, back when I was there in the late '90s, it was just sort of Waco Branch Davidians.
Yep.
Now it's Chip Gaines and Chip and Johanna Gaines? Is that their name?
Yeah,
Magnolia.
The stuff that you buy at Target and the cooking stuff.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
No, they do a show on.
Oh yeah, they've got shows too. Yeah.
They're more
big time
famous than anybody.
Yes.
Anyway, it's like a mecca for people who are doing housing projects down there.
Awesome.
So I went there. That's where I met my wife. She's a prosecutor, former prosecutor from East Texas. Went to law school in Chicago.
Okay.
Kind of did a circuitous route through the Central Time Zone. So went to Chicago, went to New Orleans, went to Dallas, worked at a firm there, and came back to Lincoln.
Yeah.
Almost 15 years ago.
Awesome.
I shouldn't say come back to Lincoln. I came to Lincoln. I didn't know anyone here.
Oh.
My first friends were in their 80s.
Okay.
Went on a double date to Ruby Tuesdays. That was my first. Heather and I came here.
I was like, awesome. What in the world?
Yeah, I think it's still around.
Yeah, the salad bar. I mean, it's classy.
The 1980s or with a couple in their 80s?
The couple in their 80s, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was great.
I
So,
like it.
So 15 years ago, and now I got 4 little kids.
Congrats.
And life's crazy busy.
I know. I've got 4 too.
You're in the 4-kid club?
Yes. It's nuts.
How old's your oldest?
She's 13 going on 14. So
and what about your youngest?
Yeah, and then so it was kindergarten preview day today. So she's 5. And my Heather, my wife's also Heather.
Baby,
you have a Heather also?
Yeah. So they did kindergarten preview day today. So yeah, I'm gonna have 4 in the school building next year. High school through kindergarten.
Man, we are right there. My youngest is 6.
Yep.
This is the 1 year they're all in the same.
Yeah.
But there's no one named Heather that's under the age of 20.
It must have just fallen off the top 50 names.
Anyway.
Fell out of the baby book or something. I don't know. Yeah.
I know we got to talk real stuff, but
yeah.
In my world, talking 4 kids and
we'll get into that when we
that's real stuff.
When we start talking about the social media stuff with kids, we'll compare notes on that stuff. We'll get into that here in a little bit. So
all right.
But what drew you to a legal career in the first place?
Well, I almost none of my decision making until a certain point in my life. I think my decisions now. I want the people in Nebraska to know that as their attorney general, my decision making is pretty solid now.
Good.
It wasn't very thoughtful. So I went to college because it was far enough away from my parents that they would have to call before they showed up.
Okay.
And it was warm. That was my thought process when I did that.
Yeah.
That sounds like an older teenager thought process.
Important criteria.
Early 20s,
Yeah, at the time it felt wise. So I was actually almost went to medical school.
Oh.
I went to pre-med, took my MCAT, got in.
Okay.
Was this close to going to medical school and decided my brother didn't get in, but he's a doctor now, so he made it eventually. But he didn't get in before me. He's 2 years older than me, and he didn't have a backup plan. So I was like, well, maybe we should have a backup plan before I applied.
Sure.
So I applied to law school too, and then I got into law school. And I was like, maybe I wouldn't be a great doctor.
Okay.
So that was like I was like, well, I don't really want to be a doctor, so let me go to law school. I got into University of Chicago, which was considered to be pretty like hard and rigorous. So I was like, oh, this sounds like a good challenge.
Okay.
And you can't really commit, like medical malpractice is like a big deal. Someone's life's on the line.
Yeah.
But I just didn't think I had like the hand-eye coordination.
Well, you got to have the insurance and all the things.
Right.
And
Were you thinking about being a surgeon? Was that
That's
what
what I was
wanted to
thinking,
do?
yeah.
Yeah. Did you tell your brother the doctor med school joke about, what do they call the guy that finishes last in med school?
Still a doctor.
Doctor, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. That's not really a joke. That's sort of like...
Well, it's true. I mean,
yeah.
There's a reason why they call it a practice, John.
Well,
We've talked about that, right?
Yeah, we have. So
The world needs good doctors. I just would not have been one.
yeah. So you graduated law school. Then what path did your legal career take? Is that the right term? Legal career?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay.
I went to clerk for a judge on the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. So it's the set layer of the federal judiciary right underneath the Supreme Court.
Oh.
And covered Texas, Mississippi, and Louisiana. And then I worked for a really big firm in Dallas.
Okay.
And was there for about 5.5 years. And my wife and I got engaged, Heather.
Yep.
And we were like, do we want to be in Dallas and raise kids there?
Right.
Or do we want to come be somewhere else? And we thought, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter like how many sushi restaurants are around, or like we want to see our kids and
Sure.
raise them in an environment similar to what we had growing up. She's from East Texas, but a small town. So like those kind of small town values.
Yeah.
So we said, let's move to Lincoln. So I came here, and then I worked at a firm in Omaha, commuted every day.
Okay.
And I'm kind of an entrepreneur at heart. And so I was like, I'm going to start my own firm. So I started my own firm Valentine's Day 2011. And for the first 7 years, I didn't have enough money to hire one full-time employee, but just sort of kind of kept grinding.
Yeah.
And when I left to take this job, we had 120 lawyers.
Wow.
Holy moly.
So I grew it out of North Lincoln, the old Highlands. That's where I started. I got pictures where I have far less gray hair and like a really messy office. That's all I could. I just worked in my basement.
This is why we don't do video. So, Yeah.
So 2011 you started. So when did it really start to take off?
It went through a couple different phases. It's around 2016, 17. It started to boost. And then right before COVID, it hit another. And then right after COVID, it just took off. Because people started realizing that people were looking like, do I want to live in a big... So we're competing against firms in big cities. So like we would go after... So our proposition in the marketplace was, we'll bring the same lawyers to you that you would find in D.C. or Dallas, because a lot of our lawyers were in D.C. and Dallas. But because our overhead was based on real estate in Lincoln, Nebraska, or salaries in Lincoln, Nebraska compared to those cities, we could charge 40% less. And after COVID, people started thinking like, do I want to do this? They started thinking about all the stories, people leaving big cities to go to Boise or go to rural communities.
Yeah.
So once that kind of there's kind of a reordering in the marketplace, and we were kind of seized to take advantage of it, and then we just took off. Now my wife runs it now.
Yeah.
It's the largest
Heather.
woman-owned firm. Heather.
Yes.
We're gonna bring it back.
Yeah, I think so.
In like 20 years, there's gonna be like in like a year, there's gonna be like a Heather
A bit boom.
Don't you
Yeah.
think? So she took it over. It's the largest women-owned firm in the country, and
Wow.
it's even run better than when I was there, which maybe isn't saying much. I think they're up to like 170 or 180 lawyers at this point.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
Good for you guys.
but I got to keep this job because I'm not so sure I'd have a job back for me.
You wouldn't hire you back? Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll see. See
You
what
can start
happens.
all over again. Start a new one. There you go.
I'm too tired for that.
Well, so it's at some time you decided to venture into the public service realm. So what brought you into seeking to be a public official?
So I'd moved to Lincoln.
Yep.
My wife, it was a big deal. I mean, Texans don't leave Texas for anywhere. I mean, you can't get them to go to Florida, California, and very few come to Nebraska. I think partly it's like they're not sure if they have like the right visa to leave. The
Baby.
state.
Yeah.
I mean, Texas is like another. They
It
will
is.
tell you it was another.
It's an
country.
identity down there.
It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
But she moved, had a firm,
Okay.
had a kid, had kids.
Yeah.
So every one of our eggs that we possibly could have was in the Lincoln basket. And when you're in that kind of a mode, you're like looking around and like, how do I make this community better?
Yeah.
And at the time, there was a state senator who was representing our area, and I just disagreed with a lot of the things that he was doing. And I thought, I'm a doer. You only get one life to live, so let's go. So I ran against him for legislature, and at the time, it was the most expensive race of state history, and I lost. Unlike Sheriff Wagner, you've never lost, right?
No.
You hear that confidence? No. What a dumb question.
Yeah. Lawyers are supposed to know the answer before they ask the question, right?
No, I know. He's got the look of a winner, but I didn't win.
Important here.
That's right. That's right. So I lost, and so then there was another opportunity down the road, and I ran for that.
Okay.
And I actually lost. I lost. So I came in. I was doing worse. So the goal is to come in first, Sheriff, right? Number one.
Yeah.
There's no prize for second.
Right.
So I came in second the first time I ran. And then the next time I ran, I came in third. So there's not.
So you're getting there.
Oh, well, it's the wrong way.
Yo.
Not last, but third. So I gave it one last shot in 2016. The race that in the legislature was open, I ran. And then that time I won.
Cool.
So
Abraham Lincoln tried a few times.
People used to tell me that, which is not as comforting.
Oh, well.
When you've lost several times, you're like, okay, well, maybe one of the greatest presidents we've ever had also lost 3 times. It actually doesn't make you feel as good as people think it does.
Okay. Well, I'm going to put that one back on the edit list.
Yeah, so it's like saying, Michael Jordan's missed some free throws. I'm like, well, different category.
I suppose.
Second place is first, first loser.
First loser? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I remember when I first ran, and I went and talked to somebody that was really knowledgeable about politics, and he said, "What will it do to you if you lose?" I said, "Well, I don't know." He goes, "Well, you better think about that, because if you lose, it's going to have a personal effect on you, as you know, and it's not always easy. And then what effect that will have on your children, So there's a lot of things to consider there when you're running for office."
Well, no one gave me that advice, and I just think I thought I was going to win.
You have to go in thinking that.
Yeah, you do. You don't go in
enough.
You don't go in to lose.
You don't go in to lose, but you have to have enough fear that you could lose to do all the things that are needed to win.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
But so you've never, and you all haven't run, but think about it this way. This is what I tell people: if you think about the worst grade you've ever gotten. I mean, this group you've never gotten but think about a legit. Think about if you failed, pass, fail, and you failed, which is kind of what running for office is. But then think everyone in your community. And actually, everyone in the country who knows. They know. And so that's bad. And then at least a certain, even small majority of people in your community are rooting for that outcome. And so they're sort of reveling in your defeat. So I was not emotionally prepared for that. But I think, actually, in hindsight, it was one of the best things that happened to me.
Yeah. To
kind of go through that process and be like, okay, kind of steel yourself emotionally for the fights to come. So in hindsight, I would not have changed anything.
Did you do athletics at all in school?
I played some football, but I wasn't very.
I mean, those are the things too. Like when you're going and you're supposed to make it to a certain level or a certain game or state champs, and you fall short. And I mean, that teaches you a lot at that point.
Well, think about it. I mean, we grew up in we watched the football teams in the 90s. The 93 Husker team that lost came up short in the Orange Bowl.
Yeah, against
and then
Florida
State 18. But then the ones that came back. Remember, we were off. All the articles, minute 24 on the clock that they would have in their practice sessions, and then they come back and win. And think about, it would be interesting, 30 for 30. You look at those people and interview them today, and be like, that experience of having public adversity and losing, and then overcoming it and getting a victory, how much has that impacted their confidence and success for everything else they've done in life?
And the whole program itself at that time.
Yeah.
With all things in life, if somebody doesn't get a promotion, for example, how are they going to handle that disappointment? Are they going to bounce back from it and work harder to gain that, or are they just going to kick dirt and, woe is me? And that's a really teller of character.
I agree.
Huge.
Yeah.
So you made the legislature, and then you were there for how long?
6 years in total.
Okay.
So I did a term, reelected, and then after 2 years into my second term, I was elected to this job.
So what drew you to the Attorney General's position then?
A couple things. One, it felt, but if I were to sum it up, I felt like it was a great match for my skill set and experience at a specific moment in time where I thought that really mattered. Okay. So take yourself about 2021, and you're looking around. I know some people look today, people are freaking out about what is going on in D.C., but at the time, what I was seeing was this trend over the previous 10 years of the federal government really just making decisions that were totally undemocratic. People were not through our elected representatives, not through congressional people we voted for. I mean, outside of, say, Obamacare or maybe a few outliers, most of the big decisions were being made by unelected people. And to me, who believes strongly in our constitutional system and in the structure how it helps defend liberty against consolidated power sources, structures. To me, that felt like a really big threat to the future of the country. And also the people who were really empowered to fight back against that actually were almost exclusively attorneys general.
Okay.
Because in a lot of cases, like if you're a citizen, you can't get into court. Maybe you don't have standing to fight these things. Or maybe you do, but you don't have the money to hire the lawyers and take on the fight. So you see this moment in time where I felt like there was a real threat to our constitutional structure, and AGs had a very specific and important role in fighting back. And so that met kind of my experience and background. I mean, if you think about the Attorney General's office in Nebraska, it's got 120 people, plus or minus.
Okay.
My law firm had about 120 people, plus or minus. I had done a lot of big, sophisticated, complex cases, running big teams, building culture, all these things. And so I felt like it was a good match for the moment with my experience, and it was just the right opportunity at the right time.
If you want a challenging career, a career where you can make a difference in your life, your family's life, and the lives of those in your community, come and join the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office. To learn more or to apply, visit us online at www.joinlso.com.
Well, good segue. We want to just talk about the Attorney General's office and where it came from, where it is today with you. So what is the Attorney General's office, and why do we have one?
Those are good questions. The Attorney General, I think about it, it's like the chief law enforcement officer in the state, but really it's kind of the state's lawyer, the people's lawyer. But that doesn't mean, Sheriff Wagner, you call me, but if you call me as Terry Wagner, I said, Mike, can you help me? I'm not representing you as an individual, but I am representing your rights. And so sometimes that means I'm suing the federal government to help protect the constitutional structure that protects all of us, or I'm suing the state of California because they're trying to export their own ideology into a state like Nebraska, again, contrary to the Constitution. So we're representing Nebraskans' interests across a whole variety of fronts. Some are the constitutional fronts, but there are others.
So I see a lot of times AGs are working together with other states. Do you have good relationships with them? Because you kind of like all get into one situation that you're trying to fight. And this seems to be a lot more than just Nebraska going in after that.
Yeah. And for Nebraska, so Texas or California or Florida, these huge states, I mean, they have more lawyers on a corner of one of their floors than we have in our entire people in our entire office. I mean, I think Texas might have 1,000 lawyers. I mean, they're some of the largest law firms in the world by head count. So for us to do all the things that we want to do, or the things that I want to go do, you need to find ways to get more resources. Yes. And one way to be able to punch above your weight is to leverage other people's experience and ability. And so you do that through a lot of times through multi-states. And we do that with blue state AGs and red state AGs. Seems like lately they seem to sort of work within their own party context, but that's not always the case. I don't think it should be the case.
Right.
So the relationships, I mean, you all know, right? I mean, relationships with your teammates matter a ton.
Yeah.
And sometimes they matter even more with the people who might be opposed to you on different issues. So we work a lot with other states. So I spend a lot of time just building those one-on-one relationships.
Yeah.
So it's a constitutional office. I mean, it's one of the first dates all the way back to the inception of Nebraska as a state, right?
Yeah. So your second question, why do we have it? I mean, I think every state's got one. I think they go back to about the founding. I wouldn't have the year specifically in mind. Interestingly, you actually do not have to be a practicing or a lawyer to be the Attorney General.
Okay.
Like back in the 1800s, you didn't have to be a lawyer even to be a judge in a lot of places, or like pass the bar and all that. It's kind of a little bit more of a modern invention. But it's a constitutional officer. I defend the state when it gets sued. I sue on the state's behalf. So if the governor gets sued, I'm representing him. Yep. We do a lot of criminal. We have a whole bunch of bureaus we might get into in a minute. But we are the state's lawyer, and I think every state has one. Every state should have one. Yeah. I mean, we're a big organization. Sure. You got to have legal counsel.
Well, let's talk about the bureaus and so those are kind of the different breakdowns and units within your office. So what are those bureaus? And
that's sitting here today, and these are not statutorily created. So like
So you can organize your office however you want.
generally, there's a couple of small exceptions. So Medicaid fraud is an example.
Okay.
Medicaid's a federal statutory program, and so it helps. That has to be a Medicaid fraud unit.
Okay.
So we do, but generally speaking, I can sort of mix and match today, it kind of runs the gamut from subject areas. So we have our Solicitor General group. Those are kind of Navy SEAL lawyers who fight these constitutional issues. So if we're in court, which we were in the United States Supreme Court a couple years ago.
Okay.
It was my SG who was there arguing the case.
And are those usually like career type positions? For like people spend a lot of time in the office,
Not
or
that one, no.
Okay.
Generally not. And partly is because part of the reason is the workload's pretty immense.
Oh wow.
It's really built for someone to come in, usually when they're the first part of their career,
Yeah.
and they really get an enormous amount of experience.
Sure.
But those lawyers in that group work a lot of hours.
Okay.
I mean, I've gotten memos and briefs from them 2-3 in the morning on a Saturday.
Oh wow.
Before, so you don't want to do that for a whole career. So a lot of them go and then they go do something else.
Get burned out. Yeah.
You get burned out over time. So they come in so that's the SG.
Yep.
So if I'm suing California or New York or something like that, SG's I have a consumer protection group. So this is kind of like the plaintiff's lawyer for the state. So people get, I mean, Sheriff, we did a whole scam.
And we refer people to your fraud division all the time.
Yeah, but we have such a great working relationship with y'all. But people get scammed all the time.
Yep.
And sometimes it's, phishing attacks or catfishing attacks or crypto attacks or things like that. But then sometimes it's just businesses that are defrauding people.
Mm-hmm.
Someone will say, give me X dollars and I'll go do this thing for you. And then they don't.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what our consumer group does.
That was my first exposure to your office when I was, I actually was working for Ben in criminal investigations. And I don't know if you still have it. There was a white collar crime task force that I worked on with the AG's office. Maybe the name's changed over the years.
We don't have a specific section or bureau anymore, but that kind of folds in under our criminal bureau.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But the consumer group, I'll tell you, so I had maybe one of the most rewarding moments as being Attorney General came about 3 weeks ago or so. And I won't name the person or the entity, but there was a individual couple who were in their 70s, retired, not from the United States, they're here legally, and they had saved up like the entire amount of money that they had in their lives, which was like something a little bit north of like $100,000. And they had it at a financial institution in the state. And someone had come in and basically was able to trick the bank into draining every penny that they had. So one day, you can imagine, put yourself in the shoe. You've worked your entire life, 30, 40 years, saving up every penny. You're not working anymore, physically not even able to.
Right.
This is everything you have to secure your remaining years on Earth. And it's gone.
Yep.
And they were really struggling to get the money back, any of the money back, to getting any of the help. And so eventually it got to us, and we got involved. And after some time, they got every penny of their money back. And so the rewarding moment was when I was able to talk to the grandma.
For sure.
And she was so thrilled because it wasn't about the money. It was about like their safety and security and their future. And so she's promised me a cake. I'm getting a cake. I think I'm going to get a cake and carne here in a couple of weeks. But that's our consumer group. And that's a very rewarding part of the job. One I didn't fully appreciate when I ran.
Sure.
They're the ones, we might talk about our TikTok suit.
Yeah.
And really helping kids and consumers. They're on the front lines. We got an amazing group.
Okay.
There.
Awesome.
A couple other ones. We have a civil division, civil litigator. So state's a multi-billion-dollar organization with thousands of employees. Things happen. You have a slip and fall. You have a car accident. Sometimes you have much more significant litigation. Someone might challenge the constitutionality of a statute passed by the legislature.
Okay.
Well, when that happens, you got to have lawyers who can go into court and fight, and that's my civil group. Got a criminal group, criminal appellate group. Got the Medicaid fraud group. One group that I have that people often don't know exists and maybe don't think that we need, or not that they don't think that we need it, that just doesn't come to mind, is we have a whole health licensure group. So we've got great nurses and doctors in the state, and the vast majority of them do great things, but some of them don't do great things. I mean, some of them will take pills.
We've had some of those cases, yeah.
We have worked some of those.
Oh, yeah. And some of the stories are horrendous, but we have to keep Nebraskans safe.
Yeah.
We can't have people in a position of trust who are then making really bad decisions and
violating that trust.
100%. And so that group helps go after licenses of people who shouldn't be in the medical profession anymore.
Yeah. Awesome.
And we also protect the natural resources of the state. So water fights. So you've heard in the paper possible lawsuit against Colorado.
Yeah, or like the Republican River and
South
things like
Platte. Yeah,
that.
the Republican in the past with Kansas.
Yep.
The Platte River with Wyoming, the North Platte River with Wyoming. So
Okay.
water is one of our most important resources besides people.
Especially of
probably.
late. I mean,
Completely.
hasn't been raining, how all those
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
things. Yes.
So with your staff, you mentioned 120 give or take people. How many of those? What would be the breakdown of like attorneys versus your professional civilian staff?
Yeah, we have just north of about 70 lawyers.
Okay.
And then there's a chunk who are paralegals and legal assistants who help really support
Yeah.
the legal work.
Yeah.
And then we've got front office teammates, people who help me with policy. We've got our amazing consumer affairs response team and comms team who do great work. Our CART team, we call it the CART. You get the acronym, Sheriff, Consumer Affairs Response Team.
Yeah, okay, gotcha.
You, make sure
Very
you pay
nice.
attention,
Very nice.
I wasn't sleeping. Yeah.
No,
Okay.
they take in thousands. So I would say this for people, 402-471-2682. If someone has like an issue that they're working through, maybe they think they get someone scamming them or something like
Yeah.
that. They call them. We have real life people who take those calls and can just help navigate. And we don't always have like we can actually like reverse the charge, but it's a real person who's knowledgeable and trained who can kind of walk people through those problems.
Yeah.
So that's a really valuable part of our office.
Well, I mean, like in any organization, the people are where the magic happens. I mean, they're the ones that are doing the work. They're the ones that are coming in, day after day, and you can't have those happy endings without good people doing the work. So, yeah, like any organization, you need people to do those jobs. And it sounded like you had maybe a couple openings right now, or you guys are always looking for good people, right?
Always. Talent's everything. I mean, talent and culture. And oftentimes culture brings in good talent and keeps good talent.
Yeah.
So we want to be, I say internally, we want to be the best pound for pound fighter in the country. We're the home of Terrence Crawford. So I can't use his copyright. So I've got to be careful with what I say.
We were talking copyright stuff earlier,
but we want to be the best pound for pound. So to do that, we got to have a great team, great process, great culture. And so we have those things. We're always trying to get better. So yeah, we have a few openings. One opening, I'm going to break, maybe not fully break the news yet, but we opened an office in Western Nebraska in Ogallala.
Yeah.
And we've been recruiting for a full-time lawyer out there. And I'm not going to fully break the news today because this person won't start for another 2 weeks. But in about 2 weeks, we'll be announcing our first full-time hire out west.
That's great. Is that your first satellite office on the western side of the state?
I believe it might be the first satellite of any kind.
Period.
And
Okay.
certainly, I think it's the first that far west.
Well, that's great. Well, good for you guys. ago.nebraska.gov/jobs is where folks can go to find out employment information with the Nebraska Attorney General's office. You guys are also on X at NE Attorney Gen, GEN. Now where people can find you guys.
Yeah, and LinkedIn. We have a LinkedIn page.
Okay.
And people can email us at recruit. Let me get the email before recruiting at Nebraska. I'll get the email. We have a recruiting email, but if they go to LinkedIn, there's also they can just message us directly.
We can throw it on the episode too, so people can find it if they're listening, and just look down in the episode details, and you can find it there. So speaking of recruiting, we need people to work in public safety across Nebraska, and your office has been working exceptionally hard on a new recruiting microsite for all kinds of public safety jobs. A lot of times, people think cops, but it's a lot more than cops that we need to make the public safety wheels keep on turning. So tell us a little bit about this microsite and what was the impetus behind that?
Yeah, so the site, thanks for the opportunity to talk a little bit about this. So the site is securethegoodlife.nebraska.gov, and it tells a story of 3 different categories of critical law enforcement officers. Sheriffs, of course, maybe at the top of the list.
Thank you. Yeah.
As it should be.
Yeah, right.
First in our hearts.
When I do the county attorney podcast,
Yeah,
we'll see if
that's fine.
county attorneys and then police. So in Western Nebraska, there's fewer PDs, but there are some. And no matter where we are, whether it's Douglas, Lancaster, or Scottsbluff, or anywhere in between, we need good people. We really need good people. So that's the site. But let me explain why we did it the way we did it and what we're trying to do strategically. Because I think anyone can throw a site up.
Yep.
But a site doesn't really do much on its own unless it's like thoughtfully considered as part of a larger strategy. So basically, we go out west. I hit all 93 counties my first year, and then we've been doing these regional meetings. And it's clear to me that the opportunity to be in law enforcement anywhere in Nebraska, but especially in our smaller communities. I mean, the commute in Lincoln's ridiculous. I mean, it's 7 minutes to get into anywhere. Or not anywhere, but to get to from my house to the Capitol, 7 minutes.
Reminds you of Texas.
I mean, Dallas, it was an hour of bumper to bumper. But as good as it is in Lincoln, if you go to Grant, Nebraska, it's amazing. There's like a couple lights. So to me, I see the opportunity for professional and personal fulfillment for the right person. You can feel like you go to work every day with a purpose. You're making a difference. You're impacting your community. And you can see your family, be outdoors, all these things. So what we saw when we went out was two things. One, a lot of the individual agencies, not necessarily they don't have this great podcast and this great team and that y'all have, but they don't have those types of things, and they're siloed. So if someone wants to work, in Keith County, Nebraska, they may not know that they want to work in Keith County. Maybe the right person is someone who just has like an inclination to go live by a big lake and do something that's meaningful, but they're not looking and searching Keith County, Nebraska job openings. And there's no really way to connect what I think is a nationwide marketplace for this kind of talent with people with job openings on the ground. And so the first goal is to say, let's have one sort of statewide platform that we can drive resources and attention to, so that if someone is looking for something different and they don't know exactly what they want to do or where, and they're in Oregon where maybe they're thinking about getting rid of qualified immunity, or Colorado or California, whatever it is, they can start searching and it gets on their radar in a way that maybe it wouldn't if it was just like the Keith County website. That's goal number one. So that's why it's one URL. We're putting a lot of direction or sort of attention towards it. But the second is, I think people, and I saw this when I was recruited at my firm. So I recruited nationally, and the very first person to hire to bring to Lincoln from a big city was incredibly hard because they just couldn't visualize themselves being there. Like maybe they felt it in their heart, like this would be awesome. Like I could just see my kids more. I can buy a house. This is great. But they can't visualize success. And it's a big move with your family to say, I'm going to take everyone and go to Lincoln. So but the second and the third and the fourth and the fifth were so much easier. And the reason why is because they could look at the first person I hired. And they're like, oh man, John had a great experience. Or Terry was, he was so successful. I can now see myself do. And then they could talk to someone and this person could say.
That's what I would say is the big thing. Yes, you have somebody there to cheerlead for you on how great it really is.
And answer the questions that they had and how they. So the thought was, well, we don't know where everyone wants to go, but if we start to tell these stories. And so we did videos. We interviewed people, chiefs and county attorneys and sheriffs and sheriff's deputies.
There's good videos on there.
Great videos. And it's about like not just your job, but like how is it like living in these communities and how has it impacted your life, both personally and professionally. And so the more stories we tell, I think it helps someone who's looking be visualized. So it widens, if you're thinking about like sales terms, like a sales funnel, like it widens the funnel at the top, so more people are seeing it, and it helps encourage them to get to the bottom because they're staying as part of the process because they're getting excited and more engaged. And then it doesn't bring them to us. We're not taking any of these leads. We're kicking them out to our partners.
It's part of the reason we do this show, because we want to be able to feature stories of our people and people in our community like you, so that it's not just this abstract thing on Google somewhere, but they can actually. That path is illuminated a little bit to say, hey, I could see myself. That sounds a lot like me. I could do something.
Well, it humanizes us all too so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
And because sometimes they look at us and do that, and they they don't have anything in their mind. Oh, this professional individual and all this, and they kind of forget once in a while is we have families. We like to go out and do things and have fun and all those kind of things.
Don't you think Terry would be slightly more relatable if he lost an election at one point though? Like slightly. I mean, he's got sort of that like Papa Bear.
We don't need it. My job kind of runs with him, so I don't.
You don't have to answer that. Yeah, you got to answer that.
He does better with the humble brag. Have you ever lost? No.
I got to give you a lot of credit for not only doing the podcast, which I think is great, but doing it consistently. Like if you talk to people in marketing, they say the most important thing is doing it over and over and over again. So what has this been? 2 years now?
2 years. Yep. And we've gotten a little bit farther in between episodes, but we're trying to keep them going. So it's been busy.
John he came back from the FBI National Academy and twisted my arm. And I finally just gave in and said, okay, just do this.
Yeah,
And then
Ben jokes. He thought it wasn't going to work. So he's like, yeah, go ahead. It's fine.
I mean, what do you think? We could do like a show. We could do like a daily show. Maybe.
Yeah, you guys.
No,
The
Sheriff?
Daily Show?
Yeah.
Or not the Daily Show.
Copyrighted as well. Darn it.
There's all sorts of lawsuits that are going to fly out of this.
Well, as a matter of fact, with John brought this back from the academy, and about the FBI Academy, and like 1% of the officers in America are invited to attend the National Academy, and we have about 6 graduates within our agency. So John had come back from the National Academy, and they talked about podcasts, and he wanted to get it up and running for about $1,500. We were able to buy the equipment, and now he helps teach one of their classes remotely at the academy with his experience with podcasts. So
we've tried to plant some seeds for quite a few across the country, just public safety stuff, and we try to keep it public safety related. And but again, like Ben and I were talking, it's just it's humanizing what we do, and there's context and nuance to what we do, and you can't always do that in a 30-second soundbite on the news. So.
Well, like if somebody comes and listens to this, they're not going to know what all you do in your office, and it's kind of an eye opener of, oh my gosh, that I knew somebody did it, but I don't know who.
yeah.
That's what, every day when I go to the office, I'm like, oh my gosh, I know someone's doing something, but I'm kidding. I have a good handle on what's going on at the office, but I'm just kidding.
Well, speaking of the good handle on what's going on, talk a little bit about what are your priorities for your office? You've got all these bureaus that are set up, but what are the issues and the priorities that are important to Mike Hilgers?
It's a good question. So the first priority actually isn't an outcome-based priority. It's a team-based priority. So, and I mentioned it a little bit before, my goal first is to have the very best public service firm in the United States. That's nimble, hardworking, got amazing culture, detail-oriented, picks fights and wins fights. You don't win all the fights you pick, but we want to win our fair share. If you build that first, then as the problems that arise, which I can't predict in a year,
but they're going to come.
Then I have a team that's equipped to take them on. So that's really job number one, because if in a year I don't know what my priority is going to be, I know I need to have the capacity, the work capacity to be able to tackle those priorities. So that's sort of job number one. Then if you think beyond that, you sort of separate them into a couple of buckets. One bucket is there's a lot of the office that just does amazing work that doesn't need a lot of my direction or involvement, in part because it's reactionary. So think about criminal prosecution. You don't go out and say, well, I want to go do more murder investigations in some county in Nebraska, in Thomas County, Nebraska. Unfortunately, something bad happens. You all know. Right. Mm-hmm. Something bad happens, you get a call and you got to help them. Health licensure stuff, same thing. Medicaid fraud. But where I spend most of my time thinking is like, where are the problems in society that I can direct the unique resources of my office, both human resources, but then statutory and constitutional authorities, to go fight against that I think will matter to Nebraskans. And some days, sometimes I don't, and I couldn't predict that, like that month, that's the thing I'm going to go fight on. But then as the things come up to me, I fight. So let me just give you a couple of examples. And but there's probably some themes within that. So constitutional structure is really important to me. So that's why when President Biden was president, we were really on the front lines fighting time and time and time again to all these agency actions that they were taking that were really what should have been congressional actions, or no action at all, because they didn't have the constitutional authority. So that's why we went to the Supreme Court on Nebraska v. Biden. We sued on waters of the U.S. I mean, they were trying to basically shut down coal power in the United States. So we joined a coalition to sue on those things. So that's a whole bucket. The consumer stuff is really important to me, especially, say, in the social media context. What we're seeing. So we have a mental health crisis in the country, especially for young people. And that it's really, you got to approach it from two perspectives. One is downstream. Do we have enough resources to be able to help the people who are having mental health issues? You all see it with like EPCs. We've introduced some legislation to help our rural agency partners have some more resources to help on the downstream side, but we have to look upstream. So what's causing it upstream? Right. Well, we don't know everything. It's a lot of different variables. We know some things that are causing it. We know things like synthetic Delta-8 are causing mental health breaks. We know marijuana is causing mental health issues. We absolutely know that social media in the hands of young people, especially young girls in particular, is causing mental health issues. And so one of the things we can do is use our resources to help try to hold those people accountable.
Yeah.
So TikTok's a good example. So TikTok.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So we sued them in Lancaster County, and basically our claim is, the issue we have is basically we want to make sure that when people are buying products or services, that the company selling them are being honest. That's right. I mean, we just want, you can have puffery, you can sort of say we're the best, but you have to be fundamentally honest about what it is that you're providing. And I have 4 kids. You do too.
Yep.
And in the social media space, it's really important that people are honest. So you have parents who are trying every day to make good decisions for their families and for the kids. So what we have said in our papers that TikTok does is that they tell everyone that it's safe and that all sorts of bad content is not on the site. It's not appropriate. They have all these great parental restrictions. And that's a pretty powerful thing if it's true. And I'll tell you, my daughter, doesn't have a cell phone and she won't be on TikTok, has used that to argue to be on TikTok. Oh, Dad, there's these parental controls. And I know lots of parents who have let their kids be on these platforms because of the representations made by the companies. Well, when we sent our investigators on TikTok, within minutes, literally within minutes, like they would create accounts, 12-year-old girl, whatever. Yeah. The amount of inappropriate material, pornographic materials, explicit like drug use type material, things that drive body dysmorphia and suicidal ideation are being presented by the algorithm to kids.
Yeah.
So we sued really in a landmark lawsuit in Lancaster County. It's still ongoing.
Yeah.
Here in Lincoln. So that's one.
Yeah.
That's an example.
Yeah. And I count me as one of the dads in that group that I've leaned more on the very tight controls, but we've been to a lot of trainings too. I mean, I think of like David Grossman talks about like some of the violent video games and exposure to that. And so sometimes the argument that you'll hear is, well, and especially with our generation now that social media has been around for a minute, well, I had that when I was growing up, but I didn't turn out to be a bad person or have a mental health problem. And he likened it to the thing that, well, just because you didn't wear your seatbelt every time you were in a car, it maybe the right confluence of things didn't come together and you didn't get in a crash, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't wear your seatbelt all the time. And so, doing some of those things
doesn't mean you're safe.
Doesn't mean you're safe.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I think
might be lucky.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of kids out there that maybe don't have the right family situation going on at home. They don't have the right supports. And maybe it's just the right exposure to whatever that content is. You gave some good examples of that. I mean, it's a scary world out there.
I would tell you, if anyone's on the fence on this, I would encourage them to read a synopsis of The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt.
Okay.
It is, you get by page 12 or 15, and you're like, this is the worst. And the impact it's had. I mean, the data's in.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. And it does, it rich, poor, broken household, nuclear family. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It impacts everyone. I'll give you a stat that we put in our complaint that is so eye-opening, but as just a very small example. In the state of Nebraska we're in like the top 3. I think it's per capita, but the top 3, maybe number 2. I don't think we're number 1, but maybe there's not a list you want to be on.
Okay.
Of use of people, say under the age of 16, so young people using TikTok. I mean, on the margins, I might have this slightly. I don't have it in front of me, but like between the hours of 1 and 4 in the morning, or 12 and 4 in the morning during the week, we have like the highest per capita use. Really? We're in the top 5 of the country. If you go to China, which of course this is where TikTok is, they have all sorts of restrictions. So instead of seeing content that I described, which is negative, corrosive content, they have content that's all about nationalism and
what the government wants them to see,
and productivity and being a good citizen. And you can't use it during school, and you can't use it at night. And so quite literally, it's a digital poison that it's infecting a lot of our young. Now, adults use it, grown-ups use it. Yeah. And I think, you can make those kinds of choices. Sure. But it's all about people need to understand, we do such a good job saying the food industry. We all go, if we go to a Subway or a restaurant, you can be assured that what you want to go get is what you're going to get.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what's happening in TikTok. It's definitely not what's happening in the synthetic Delta 8 world. I mean, people go in there and say, I think this is a legal thing.
Yeah.
It's hemp derived, it's natural, whatever else. And we could talk about our investigation there. And Sheriff, I mean, it's outrageous.
Well, let's talk about it.
So this is a great example. I was trying to build a team to go make a difference, not always knowing the battle we were going to have to fight. And Delta 8 was a great example. I didn't run on that.
Yeah.
I didn't wake up and say, I've got to go fight the Delta 8 scourge.
So, and for people that don't know at home, so Delta 8 is like a synthetic version of,
Delta 9, THC.
THC from
Yeah,
the
it's a
marijuana plant.
it's a synthetic form of marijuana. Is
Yes.
maybe a simple way to say
Well,
it.
it is. This is
Help me out legally
so
here.
it is complicated, which I think a
Part
lot
of the problem, right?
Where there's bad actors in this industry, they're taking advantage of sort of the difficulty of understanding what is what.
Yeah.
So there's the cannabis plant, and if it has a certain level of Delta 9,
right.
it is marijuana. That's what people smoke.
All the way down to the molecular level.
Yes,
Yeah.
but it's in the plant.
Right.
Yeah.
But if it's
If it has-
below a certain level, it's hemp.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. Okay. So in hemp on its own, I guess you could try to smoke it, but you can't get high. It's not a drug.
Yeah.
And in 2019, the legislature, and I voted for this bill because hemp is a commodity. You can actually, the idea was like, let's use this to
Monetize it.
monetize it. You can build furniture. You can build
Clothes,
That's
yep,
right.
all that
So
stuff.
it's a
Yeah.
cash crop, maybe.
It was planted, encouraged to be planted in World War II
Completely.
for rope.
Yes, and
Yeah.
people, there are legitimate businesses who are using hemp to be able. So this inert essential plant product.
Yep.
That's okay. No problem. I got no problem with that. So what happened is, so the hemp plant itself has naturally occurring levels of a certain set of other THC. So Delta 9 is a THC. That's marijuana. Sometimes there's very small, like minuscule amounts of Delta 8. These are like cousins.
Sure.
And naturally, they don't exist hardly at all. It's certainly not enough to do anything. In fact, one of our experts told us that in order to make one psychotropic lollipop of with Delta 8 to make you high, it would take 55,000 pounds of hemp.
So not
That'd be
even.
That'd be a big sucker, wouldn't it?
Yes. Yeah. Well, and also you can't. There's not even a commercially available way to do that.
Well, the math wouldn't make sense for a business to do that.
Yeah, you can't even do it.
Yeah.
It's like theoretical.
Right.
It's not as if you take the hemp and you like squeeze it really. It's not like you're making lemon juice.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what some people try to make it sound like. Well, it's derived from the hemp plant. You're basically just squeezing out the lemon juice. This is illegal. What we saw when we started the investigation is a whole set of synthetically created. When I say synthetic, what I mean is not the lemon juice. So they take something completely different. So this hemp, they turn it into, say, CBD, and then they subject the CBD to a whole nother set of chemical reactions, which, by the way, these are not done in like white, clean rooms. These are, where they actually make pharmaceuticals.
The FAC's not coming in and looking at it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And so they subject them to chemicals that can cause cancer, and they create chemical byproducts, some of which are things that I've just described, but other things we have never seen in nature. We have absolutely no idea. It's never been tested in even something like a rat, so we don't even know what it does. So what they're doing is they're creating these synthetic compounds, and it's not just, we say Delta 8, that's the prominent one. There's Delta 6, there's Delta 10, there's THCP, THCO.
Okay.
Some of them do exist naturally in very small amounts. Some of them are totally kind of almost made up chemicals.
Oh.
And so in 2019, when we voted on the hemp bill, what we didn't do is vote and say, oh yeah, but if you just start with that, you can make anything that you want. Because if you follow that logic down to its logical conclusion, I think there's a way you could even take hemp, subject it to enough chemical reactions, and create all sorts of other drugs like cocaine or other things that are completely illegal.
Yeah.
So we found this out. And then here's the other thing we did. So we said, this is a problem. Sheriff, I think we talked about it. This is a problem. But how big of a problem is it? So we started doing these investigations, and we started testing products. And it not only was it a problem that these products had the things that I just described, but they were you could almost say maliciously mislabeled. I mean, I think on average, we've now done, I don't know how many hundreds of tests. And I would say roughly about 90% of the products that we have tested do not match the label. And not just in small amounts, where it's, you get a sandwich and it says it's 30 grams of carbs and it's only got 25 or something. We're talking about like orders of magnitude difference. So as an example, I share all the time, 10 milligrams or so of Delta 8 can send my 6-year-old son to the hospital. We found products that had 700-800 milligrams of Delta 8. Wow. And they might only say, some of them didn't even say they had Delta 8 at all. And then some might say, no, it's got 20 milligrams. I mean, these are just appear to be wild guesses, just completely wild guesses. So now we have what I could share publicly, based on what we've done publicly, is we have sent cease and desist to every store in Omaha.
Yeah.
We've
and that's so these are products that have been on some shelves in Nebraska.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And people see them at these shops all around the state.
Yeah.
And I think people were taking advantage of our general sense in our society that if something's being sold out of a storefront, it must be legal. You know,
Somebody's watching it.
someone's watching it. That's right. And the statements that I think in many cases were false, they were relying on the labeling and the fact. So people are just like, oh, it must be legal. And they don't know what's in them.
Yeah.
And so we've been slowly turning the tide
Okay.
against it. We filed a number of lawsuits. We have a number of investigations. We've sent cease and desist. We've been successful with a lot of our lawsuits. And we're slowly getting people to realize this is not the industry that they think it is.
Sure.
So that's an example of something that we're doing that I think both helps consumers, but also helps on this mental health issue.
Yeah.
Have you got any of them to switch or go out of business or any of that at this point?
Absolutely. We've gotten some have gone out of business and some have actually complied and said we will not sell these products anymore.
So do you have a list of products that you say absolutely no, or all of a sudden they're changing what the product looks like?
That's the problem.
Just rename it or
That's
something.
the problem.
Yeah.
We have examples that are the things that we see to kind of help guide others. I mean, our agency partners who want to do something about it independently. But it's hard to get like a comprehensive. A lot of these are manufactured nationally by, distributors who are just changing their products all the time.
Yeah. Well, and there's some states where it's legal, which makes it more complicated.
That's right. But it's interesting. There are a lot of states where it's not legal, explicitly been prohibited. And those states oftentimes are the ones that are the most permissive on drugs. So think about what that tells you. You've got states like Colorado and Oregon. So Oregon legalized
Pretty much
everything.
everything. Yeah.
But not Delta 8.
Wow.
So Nebraska becomes kind of a dumping ground for all this really bad product that's all around the country.
Juvenile justice issues. I know that was another important thing that came up at our public safety meeting with you this year. What's on the juvenile justice front for you guys?
Well, I want to explain to your listeners what we did. I think the methodology for how. So when I went and talked to all 93, I mean as many as I could in the 93. I mean I didn't talk to every. Not everyone was around, but I met with law enforcement of all 93 counties and asked what are the big issues.
Yeah.
And everyone's got a few different issues. It's no one's exactly alike, but the things that came to the fore were recruiting, mental health, and juvenile justice.
Yep.
And there are others.
But those are the themes, kind of.
Yeah, that's right. So when we had our regional meeting, when we all met together,
Yeah.
we said, hey, let's deep dive into a couple of these issues instead of just. One of the things I hate is a meeting that doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Where you get done with a meeting, you're like, why did we just spend an hour or two? What's the purpose? What are we going to go do? What's our action item? You know? And so we said, let's not do that. Let's actually meet, dive deep. We'll bring our team, think through the things that we could do coming out of it. On juvenile justice, we are working. There's a bill in the legislature right now. I think you're aware of. Senator Epe's brought a bill. That's not part of our broader efforts. We support that bill. It's not part of our broader efforts. Omaha's got a huge juvenile justice problem.
Yeah, Sheriff Hanson's been pretty vocal about
That's
a lot
right.
of those things. Yeah.
And he's one of our partners as we think it through. There's some larger structural changes I think are possible in the criminal justice realm generally on sentencing and even some things that really drive down recidivism rates. I mean, the vast majority of people, when they get out of most people are going to get out of prison. So how do we ensure that they don't go back? We want to keep the community safe, but if people are going to get out, we want to make sure they don't go back. So we're working on some things that I think we're hopeful that by January for next session will come. And juvenile justice is sort of part of that larger effort.
Okay.
Yeah, it is a little frustrating on that end with that. A lot of times the kids just know that they're going to get slapped on the hand, and all of a sudden they're doing it again and again, and there's no fear in the system at all. And it braves them, and all of a sudden they start doing more and bigger crimes.
No consequences for their actions.
Yeah, and you've got, and this is part of the problem is that, I grew up and I don't know, a 10-year-old or 11-year-old or 12-year-old who were doing gangland style murders.
Yeah.
And so when you're in the legislature and if you talk juvenile justice, it's very what you think of. I mean, you see it every day. But when you think of a 12-year-old, you think of maybe someone who's a little mischievous, maybe
skips class here.
Skips class, yeah. I mean, maybe someone really rebellious might try to get a cigarette or a vape or something like that, but not get a gun and shoot somebody.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's hard for a lot of people of goodwill and well-meaning individuals to say, wait a second, to get their mind around that there are these 11 or 12-year-olds who are doing these types of things. And in Omaha in particular, I mean, how's it been in Lincoln what have you all seen?
Well, I don't know. We've had kids 12 years old shooting people, but there's certainly some younger people. But, I think, going back to what you said, we're all in kind of our own little time warp. So I think of bad people as when I was younger and there were bad people and they were smoking weed and doing some of those things. and now things are different, and it's hard for me to grasp that.
Well, you also think everybody thinks like you, and they don't.
Yeah.
And putting in your mind that a 12-year-old's thinking like a killer is not normal for most folks to be able to put their head around that. But it does happen, and that's sad. But the realization is, what are we going to do with that individual? Because we got to protect the public.
Completely.
And the juvenile justice system, the criminal justice system is not equipped to handle 12-year-old kids.
Absolutely.
That's a parent's job. It's not the criminal justice system's job, and it's been kind of thrust upon us.
And I think Sheriff Hansen's been a great leader on this, and he's been ringing the bell, ringing the alarm now for several years. So I'm hopeful over the next couple of years there'll be some meaningful, move the needle type of reforms. You're right, law enforcement's not set up for that, but at the same time, if you do have kids, especially at Omaha. I mean, you've got kids.
Got to do something.
Yeah, you can't just let it go. That's right.
You can't.
Well, before we let you go today, and there were a couple other points on here we wanted to make sure we got to. You've had some big settlements on behalf of the people of Nebraska in your office from some of those lawsuits. So when you get a big settlement, with whether it's class action, with other states, things like that, where does that money go, or does it kind of depend?
It does depend.
Okay.
So sometimes we actually get money back for individuals.
Okay.
So we might get Terry some money back because he was defrauded, and there it will flow back to the individual.
Like the couple you described that lost $100,000.
That's right.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Sometimes it'll be earmarked, and this is true in the opioids context.
Yep.
It'll go to the opioid fund.
Okay.
It's been set up to help remediate issues associated with the opioid epidemic. Oftentimes, it will go to our state settlement cash fund.
Okay.
And that helps provide some resources for my consumer team.
Okay.
The legislature spends a little bit of that money. We try to keep enough in there to keep, because when it's paying salaries, you don't want to run that down to zero.
You've got operational costs.
Got operational costs. But if it gets above a certain amount, then the legislature can just pull some of that money if it so chooses. And so last year, maybe it was 2 years ago. No, I think it was last year. The governor, we had about an extra $15 million. And the governor swept it for property tax relief.
Okay. You talked about the satellite office in Ogallala. So that's a big step, maybe the first time ever for your office. So what does that do for the Nebraska Attorney General's office to have a satellite office 300 miles away on the other end of the state?
It does a lot for us and our agency partners. We do a lot of criminal prosecution, not so much in Lancaster County. I mean, you got Pat Condon here, who does a great job. You got the resources here. But in the western part of the state, you have county attorneys who are just one person, maybe covering 4 counties.
Part-time.
Part-time.
In some cases.
And in many cases have not seen the murder. Thankfully.
Just the reps, yeah.
Yeah, they know the reps, exactly. The practice reps are doing some of these really sophisticated, child sex assault. So we get called in a lot with our agency partners, county attorney partners out west to help prosecute crimes. So we, the Laurel murders, we're handling those. So for us, it's more for our friends out west than it is for us, but it does impact us because my lawyers are in Lincoln or Omaha. My investigators are in Lincoln or Omaha. And so if I've got a trial in Scotts Bluff or Cherry County, they've got investigation and witness interviews. I mean, they gotta get in a car and drive.
Yeah.
And so if I have someone on the ground out west, they can take some of those, and it does reduce a little bit of the burden. But the bigger thing, really, and the reason we did it was not that, although that's positive. It was how do we help reverse the tide on really running out of the tide in a critical way for lawyers out west. I mean, it is a crisis level.
Right.
I know people make lawyer jokes, but we need lawyers. We need good lawyers. We need lawyers to help access to justice, help support wills, trusts, all the things. And so for us, one of our strategies, part of our strategy is, the website, doing some of these things, but it's to get real life people, beachheads that we can build around. I told you before, when I had my lawyer in Lincoln that I recruited, made it easier for the second. Well, now that we've got this person who's going to start next month, I have a lawyer there now. What does that allow me to do? Well, it enables me to do more for my partners, but also now I can bring in interns. They have someone who can train them. I can bring in a younger lawyer that I wouldn't want to leave out on their own. But now I got a senior lawyer who can train them. And maybe that younger lawyer in 2 or 3 years can go work in a private practice or be a county attorney themselves. And so it gives me this beachhead using the resources of our office and the opportunities in our office, the career development processes that we have in our office to help build kind of an additional layer of qualified professionals out west
Makes
that
sense.
I think will have a really positive long-term impact.
Go ahead.
You talk to our counterparts in the smaller communities out west, and they so appreciate the Attorney General's office coming in and helping in those major cases like homicide cases that they don't have the expertise to work because they've never had to do it. And so they really appreciate the role the AG's office takes in assisting in those criminal prosecutions.
Do you go in and help financially with that as you come in and takes, because a murder trial is expensive, and some of these
expert witnesses
and all that, it could break a county, a small county.
A lot. We will help with defray some of the costs, certainly with the costs associated with our team. But I don't think we typically, if they have an expert, we don't typically pick those up.
Okay.
Because you're right, it can be pretty expensive.
Yeah. Well, again, this is a public safety show, so we try to bring everything back to public safety. We'll ask a lot of our guests, and I'll ask you the same question. How does the Nebraska Attorney General's office make Lancaster County and Nebraska safer?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. We do it by our great professionals being great teammates for the people who do keep people safe on the ground here in Lincoln. So on the criminal side, Lancaster County is blessed with amazing people around this table, and all the colleagues that you've got that work with you in the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office. Pat Condon and his team do an amazing job. We support you to do the work that you do on the criminal side. And then when it comes to these other the frauds, that's where we really help step in the gap and do a lot more. So we one of the greatest blessings of this job, maybe the thing that has been more of a blessing and more of an honor than anything else, is to be part of the law enforcement team, the law enforcement family in Nebraska. Yeah. I'm just a kid from Omaha who almost thought about going to medical school, didn't grow up in a family of law enforcement family of law enforcement. And to be part of this community and this family has been incredible. And so our role is just, how do we get more, how do we help, and how do we get more out of the broader team? And so in Lancaster, we're blessed with great resources, great people, so we don't have to do as much, but the relationships and the teamwork and all the things that we fight together on matters. And so I think by helping Lancaster County folks do their job and helping the state more broadly, I think that's partly how we keep everyone more safe.
Closing thoughts? Anything else?
I learned a lot. I didn't know all the things your office did. So it was very interesting. Thank you for coming.
Really,
that was great.
I really appreciate you being here.
That was awesome. Thank you all for all that you do. I mean, I'm a proud Lancaster County resident, and I'm raising 4 kids here. And I'll tell you, we recruited from big cities that lost the thread on public safety, and they lost the thread on supporting law enforcement, letting people know that the men and women in blue, that we so appreciate them. So I appreciate you, your families, everyone on your team, for all that you do to keep us safe, because we do not take it for granted, but I think a lot of times people do. So thanks for the opportunity to be on, but more than that, thanks for all that you do for our community.
We appreciate that, but happy to have you, Nebraska Attorney General Mike Hilgers. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks, guys.
Yeah. That is all the time that we have for today's episode of the 902 podcast. We appreciate you tuning in. Be sure to follow us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you enjoy listening to podcasts. You can also reach out to us on social media at LSO Nebraska on Facebook, X, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. To learn more about career opportunities at the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office, be sure to visit us at joinlso.com. You can also reach out to us via email at lso@lancaster.ne.gov. We hope to catch you on a future episode of the 902 podcast. Thanks for listening.